Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this first session of the Climate Toolkit Symposium. My name is Corinne Gibson. I'm the Director for Regenerative Culture and Community Engagement right here at Phipps Conservatory and Botanical Gardens. We're incredibly excited to have you all here with us for these 2 days of learning and collaboration. Our first panel discussion this morning is on the focus of energy and decarbonization. We'll hear presentations from Phipps Conservatory, Duke Farms, the Morton Arboretum, and the New York Botanical Garden. They will present their initiatives regarding renewable energy, decarbonization, and electrification. And then we will spend some time with our panelists in a moderated discussion. And so I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker this morning, none other than Richard Piacentini, our president and CEO of Phipps Conservatory and Botanical Gardens. Let's give him a round of applause as he comes.
Okay, well, thank you, Corinne, and thank you all for joining us today. Can you all hear me okay? Oh, fantastic. Okay. Well, I want to tell you a little bit about our journey, some of the things that we've been doing to address energy use here at the conservatory, reduce our amount of carbon that we produce, basically reducing fossil fuels, and tell you a little bit about some of the work that we've done, and then tell you about some of our future plans and some of the considerations that we're thinking about as we move forward. I think it's really important to remember when we talk about this, we talk about any of the things in the climate toolkit, to remember that there's no one size fits all. Every one of us is in a different institution, has different situation that, we really need to figure out what makes the most sense for our particular situation. The toolkit is not a contest. It's not to see who does the most. It's to figure out what makes the most sense for you. And by sharing all the information that we have collectively, hopefully we'll be able to find some things that might work in each of our situations and keep us from having to reinvent the wheel each time we want to do something. So that's the basic idea, and that's how I'd like to share what we're doing with Phipps with you, not as an example of things that everyone should do, but as an example of things that we figured out that would work here, and that maybe some of these might resonate with you as well. So I'm going to walk you through some of the projects that we've done, highlight some of the areas where we've had I think we're pretty significant in reducing energy use, and then again tell you about some of our future challenges. The first one is our visitor center, which opened in March of 2005. As you can see, most of the building is underground, and that's an energy saving strategy by having the building earthbound on 3 sides with a green roof. That actually helped us save a lot of energy there. Another interesting thing that we did in that building was we recognized that most of the heat that comes to the conservatory right now is from a steam plant, which is in the valley just west of the conservatory. The steam gets piped underground, goes to the conservatory, and then we send the condensate back to be reboiled and sent back to us as steam again. Well, we recognize that condensate that we're sending back to the steam plant is still warm, and it loses heat as it goes back to get reboiled again. So we said, that's wasting heat. Maybe we can figure out a way to use that heat. So we put this snow melt system in our front walkway, and it's tied into our building control system in the weather station, so that whenever it senses that it's cold enough or wet enough to make snow or ice, it runs that condensate through a heat exchanger, and we use that to melt the snow in the walkway. It's using waste heat to do that, and it works beautifully. We never have any snow or ice on the front walkway, and again, it's using wasted heat that would have gone back into the ground anyway. For our greenhouses and our new tropical forest conservatory, both of which opened in 2006, a number of different strategies that we use there. For our production greenhouses, we use the open roof system, which meant that it can't get hotter inside than outside, so it eliminated the requirement for having fans to force all that hot air out of the building. As you can see, we also have shade cloths, which also function as energy blankets that we could pull over the ceiling in those rooms during the wintertime to save energy at nighttime during the winter. So that actually helped us achieve LEED Platinum under the existing buildings program, and actually was the first greenhouse to get LEED certified, and it was certified as Platinum. Our next project after that was the Tropical Forest Conservatory, and we were really intrigued with this idea of opening the roof to let all that hot air escape, and we recognized that we can't really do that with this giant building, but we decided to make it so that every other row of glass on the roof would open up. So that allowed for 50% of the roof to open up, which allows a tremendous amount of air to go exit the conservatory. That helps keep the building cool. We then designed a shading system that would close under the stationary panels of glass in the summertime, leave it wide open under the vents so we have maximum amount of airflow, no screens blocking the airflow. And then on the right-hand side, you can see in the wintertime, we can close all of those shades. They're solid, they're not perforated. And then they would create an energy blanket in the wintertime, again, saving heat. Another strategy we did for this building was we recognized that the way the conservatory was shaped, it has a really tall south-facing glass wall. It slopes back to the north. It was designed that way so you can't see it when you're looking in front of the old conservatory. We didn't want a new modern building to be in the view when you look at the old conservatory from the front of the building. But we recognize that that creates a unique opportunity for us. You know, many glass houses, conservatories, are single pane glass because double pane glass blocks too much sunlight. And in the wintertime, when the days are short and the sun's low in the horizon, you need as much sunlight as you can get, particularly in the wintertime. So when we did a sun tracking study, we realized that in the wintertime, all the direct sunlight comes into that south-facing wall. None of it comes in from the roof. So therefore, we said, well, let's make the roof be double pane insulated glass, because that's where you lose most of your heat. And that would help us save a lot of energy. In the summertime, when the sun's directly overhead, we want to block some of that sunlight, so the double pane glass actually is a benefit. Some other strategies we used in that building were we put in 6 earth tubes that run under the production greenhouses. Each one of them is 300 feet long. As the hot air exits to the roof, it sucks air through the tubes. They're 15 feet underground, where the ground stays about 55 degrees year round. So that helps cool the air before it gets into the space. It's like getting free air conditioning. Our northwest and our northeast walls, as you can see in the next picture, are solid concrete insulated on the outside, so it acts as thermal massing. We put a root zone heating system on the lower left. We learned that from our friends at Longwood Gardens. And the idea is that if you keep the roots of plants warm in the wintertime, you can turn the temperature down. Great idea. We made one little error here. We didn't put a strong enough barrier over the tubes, so that when people were using shovels to change plants out, they broke the tubes. So lesson learned, make sure you put a good barrier over your root zone heating if you follow that kind of strategy. And then a misting system actually helps with cooling, again, reducing costs. So the beauty of this conservatory is it has no greenhouse effect. It's always 6 degrees cooler inside than outside, and 4 to 6 degrees cooler inside than outside, and it uses no energy to stay that cool, so it has no greenhouse effect. Our Center for Sustainable Landscapes, which is on the lower campus, and I hope you'll get to see that during the tours. Really exciting building for us. It opened in 2012 and met the Living Building Challenge. It met LEED Platinum. It was the first building in the world to get WELL Platinum certified, which is a measure of how buildings affect human health. It was the first building in the world to get CITES Platinum certified, which is sort of like LEED for landscapes. It was the first building in the U.S. to get BREEAM Outstanding for operations and maintenance. 3-star Fitwel, another measure of human health, and it was Net Zero Energy certified. So all of these certifications in one building, which really looked at how do we maximize human and environmental health, and as well as building efficiency. So for that building, really important starting out is to maximize passive strategies. Okay, the less energy you need, the easier it's going to be to achieve the zero energy certification. So we maximized opportunities for natural daylighting. We maximized opportunities for natural ventilation throughout the space. The building's super well insulated, triple pane glass windows, green roof, all helps hold energy in. And if we're producing energy, we have 16 geothermal wells. Each one's 525 feet deep, and they're powered by solar, primarily by solar, and that provides all the heating and cooling for the building. For this building, we also used something that was a new technology back in 2011 when we were building the building. We put in phase change material into all the walls in the atrium and in the roof and the ceilings of all all the office areas. And phase change material, when you heat it up, it melts, and then when it solidifies, it absorbs heat. So we use that as sort of like thermal massing within the spaces to actually help the building stay warmer in the wintertime and actually help with cooling in the summertime. The building has power, like I said, mostly by solar power. On some of the buildings, we have some roof solar over some of the parking areas. We also have a small wind turbine that provides a very little heat, electricity, but it's more of a demonstration project. But again, the building produces more energy than it uses each year through all of these different strategies. Our next building on the lower campus, again, I hope you see this, is our nature lab, a modular construction building met the Living Building Challenge Pedal certification, zero energy, completely powered by solar, which is on the roof of this building. And then next to it is the Exhibit Staging Center, which was an old public works building that we renovated to meet the Living Building Challenge and WELL Platinum. And again, that building is a net positive energy building, solar power, has geothermal wells as well for its heating and cooling, and it makes more energy than it uses every year as well. A couple of neat strategies in there. Battery backup for, I think it's 2 weeks worth of, or 10 days worth of battery backup for running the building with the batteries in that building. It also is a direct DC lighting in that building. Whenever you produce electricity with solar panels, it has to be converted from DC to AC to go through your lines within your building. And when you get your lights, which are mostly LED, you have to convert it back to DC to run the LED lights. You have loss of energy every time you do those conversions. So this building was designed so that the DC power that's produced by the solar panel goes directly to the lighting, and there's no loss by having to convert it to AC. So those are some of the strategies, some of the key strategies that we used for some of the buildings that we've done work on over the last 20 years. Looking ahead, we have this old conservatory that, like I like to tell people, the original conservatory is probably one of the best examples of the worst kinds of buildings you could possibly build. It's a single pane glass building designed to grow tropical plants in a temperate climate, which is crazy by today's standards. But that's what we have, and that's what we have to work with. So now we're working on strategies to make that be those to be zero energy buildings, as well as these three buildings here, the newer buildings, which our goal when we built these was to make them efficient. Our goal back then wasn't to be zero energy. So now we're going back, looking at this building that we're in right now, as well as the Tropical Forest Conservatory and the greenhouses. How can we make those be zero energy? What can we do to retrofit those buildings? But I put this first slide on to show you, in that circle up there, you can see that's the Belfield Steam Plant. It's a cooperative. I think it's the largest steam cooperative in the country. It provides all the steam heating for, not only for Phipps, but all of Carnegie Mellon University, all of the Carnegie museums, all of University of Pittsburgh, as well as all of the hospitals up on the hill over there. So it's a huge plant. It used to be coal-fired up until about 20 years ago when it switched over to natural gas, which was a big improvement, but still it's using a lot of natural gas. We only account for like 2% or something like that of the energy they produce, and that's how big a steam plant that is. But we'd like to get off of it. We want to get 100% off of fossil fuels. So that's one of our strategies right now, is to do that. And so if we're starting with these buildings here, one of the first things that's really important when you're doing this work is to really understand what your current conditions are. This is a graph that shows some of the energy use over the course of a year. Then we start looking at, how can we start to address that? For us, we're looking at things like heat pumps, geothermal. We also analyze solar PV and solar thermal. I don't have time to go through each of these in detail, but just to tell you some of the things that's really important to look at. Here, these are, again, some of the study parameters. Here, looking at what the energy performance would be, and you can see the purple, the heat pumps, and the blue, the geothermal, greatly reduce the amount of energy we would need compared to the one that's gray. That's the Belfield Steam Plant right now. So those are two really attractive opportunities for us for reducing steam heat our fossil fuels. Here you can see for emissions, both of these really quite a significant reduction in emissions, with geothermal being much lower. Operational costs, again, the heat pumps in geothermal, much better than any of the others, geothermal being the best. And then look at the 50-year overall performance, because we're really focused on 50 years thinking. That's how we like to look at things when we do things with Phipps. Again, 62% reduction and a 76% reduction with both of those. Here's a summary of the performance. And then here, this is important. Geothermal is very expensive to install. Drilling wells, for us to do wells for our entire upper campus would be over, like, I think, over 130 wells we would have to build. So that's really significant. And even for this portion of the back of the upper campus right here, you can see the geothermal is going to cost more than we would save. On the purple, you can see that there's actually, the heat pumps actually would help pay for themselves over time. So the heat pumps are becoming a little bit more attractive to us. Still would allow us to get 100% off of fossil fuels. Not as efficient as the geothermal, but definitely much more effective for us. So here are some of the takeaways. Another advantage of heat pumps is because they're smaller units, you can take some offline, put some online as you do things as well. Another important consideration with geothermal only works if, not only if you're extracting heat from the ground, but in the summertime you have to put that heat back. Okay? When you're looking at conservatories and glass houses, typically we're not trying to air spaces. So it's going to make the geothermal wells be a lot less effective unless we could find a way to use that cooling in the summertime. So we're looking at a combination strategy right now of looking at using geothermal for buildings where we're both heating and cooling, and heat pumps for when we're just looking at heating. Okay? I'm running out of time here. For the upper conservatory, the old glass houses, again, number of different studies that we've looked at, and again, looking at different things like heat pumps, geothermal, those combinations. Again, we'll probably be looking at a combination of heat pumps for buildings where we're cooling, and I mean, geothermal where we're heating and cooling, and then heat pumps where we're just looking for heating. Another interesting thing we're looking at is sewer heat recovery. There's a giant trunk line that runs through behind the conservatory. All that warm sanitary water from everybody flushing their toilets and taking showers and everything else running behind us, that's a great opportunity to extract that heat for heating buildings. It's a little bit too far for us to use, but we're trying to convince the Belfield boilers to actually build a sewer heat recovery plant. And if they do something like that, we might stay with them for with providing energy instead of our doing these things. And then lastly, we're looking at putting in a 2.5 megawatt solar field on an old slag field that's nearby here. Then that would get us 100% of our electricity from solar going forward. So those are some of the key things that we're looking at Phipps. And I'm going to go. Sorry about that. Okay.
Great job, Richard. Thank you. And I'm sure you have plenty of questions that you're thinking of that you'll be able to ask during the question and answer period of our panel discussion today. Alrighty. So we are going to move right along to our next speaker. Our next presenter today is going to be Jon Wagar. Jon Wagar is coming to us as the Deputy Executive Director of Operations and Sustainability at Duke Farms. And we're going to hear from him. Let's give him a round of applause as he comes.
Hey everyone. Really excited to share Duke Farms' approach to sort of campus scale decarbonization. You heard Margaret speak last night a little bit about Duke Farms, but we really think of ourselves as a living laboratory for ecological restoration, applied science and conservation, and energy transition. And I'll walk you through how we've approached our decarbonization work over the past several years. So just a little context. Oops, went too fast. Duke Farms is a center of the Doris Duke Foundation, and we're located on about 2,700 acres in central New Jersey in sort of a peri-urban environment. So you can think of everything to the east of Duke Farms as essentially town and city until you hit Manhattan, and everything to the west as kind of subdivisions, smaller farms, sort of more rural New Jersey. So it puts us in a really interesting kind of rural, suburban context. And we operate a lot like a small town. It was a former estate of James Buchanan Duke and Doris Duke. So we manage over 100 buildings, and we own our own electrical circuit, our own utilities, and we welcome over 100,000 visitors a year, and sponsor many mission-related events and conferences. So it's a very active site for the community and for our mission and the foundation's mission. And it gives us a real incredible opportunity to, and responsibility to really model what decarbonization and sustainability looks like at an institutional and campus scale. So back in 2015, we started what's now called our Natural Systems Energy Plan, which lays out 5 key steps. While it's shown linearly here, I'll note that we're kind of constantly evolving, and definitely the sort of final 3 on these are sort of on a continuous feedback loop. So the 5 steps are: first, establishing a baseline. We quantified our energy use and emissions across all systems. The second one is clarifying our goals. The third was prioritizing strategies. The fourth was implementing and optimizing, which we're constantly doing. And the fifth was tracking and visualizing and refining. And I'll walk you through each one briefly. First, establishing a baseline. Now, as all of you know, it's super important to understand what your carbon footprint is. So in 2015, we completed both a carbon emissions inventory, and we also did a traditional energy audit, because the first thing you really want to do is look at energy efficiency and conservation in your buildings and your campus to really reduce your demand for carbon emissions, right? So the emission work helped us understand where our greenhouse gases were coming from. And again, the energy audit really showed where we could make some improvements in building envelope work and efficient lighting and things like that. Really a lot of low-hanging fruit with short payback times. So what we ended up doing actually is building a really granular spreadsheet-based model. And it focused on scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, and a little bit on scope 3. So we looked at at employee commuting. As far as our scope 3 of it. But we looked at everything from our buildings. So what you see on the left here is a model of all our buildings and the way they're heated and the electrical circuit and all kinds of future stuff we wanted to do. That's from 2015, which actually a lot of that we ended up doing. And also our fleet. So we do have a lot of equipment, farm equipment, agricultural equipment, trucks, et cetera, to manage the property. So we built this spreadsheet ourselves, and I think that was really important, because rather than relying on like an online calculator or something, we really dig into what our energy system looked like on a specific scale and a more regional scale. So we were able to debate questions like, do we use New Jersey's grid emissions factor or the PJM, which is our RTO factor? And it's very different. So New Jersey, it's about 35% nuclear, 55% natural gas, as opposed to PJM, which has much more coal, right? So those are the sort of decisions that are really interesting to make, to think about when you're looking at carbon footprint, because they have implications not just for your institution, but also for communication and for broader policy. So again, building this model from the ground up, we're able to really think about these granular things. And because I'm a nerd, I like that. But also, I think it had other good impacts in making it a very accurate and transparent carbon footprint. So the final thing we did is we worked with Rutgers University, conduct a carbon baseline of our 2,700 acres, because we know their carbon stocks and potential carbon sinks, and we may be able to use that to offset some of our emissions, realizing it's going to take a while to reduce our emission. So. What's really fascinating about Duke Farms after we did this carbon footprint is our energy and emissions breakdown closely mirrors what you see nationally, a national average. So about a third each from electricity, heating, fuels, and transportation of our emissions comes from those sectors, our fossil fuel use. And that makes our site a nice little microcosm of what we need to do at campus scales, at personal scales, sort of nationally, and it's just scaled down to Duke Farms. Okay, the second thing, clarifying goals. Once we had a baseline, we set clear time phase decarbonization goals. So we want 100% clean electricity by 2025, and 80% emissions reductions by 2030, carbon neutrality by 2035, and by 2040 we aim to be carbon negative, meaning our lands will absorb more carbon dioxide than we emit. So the next step was prioritizing our strategies, and these strategies will not be a surprise to any of you. These larger strategies, and two specifically stand out. One is land restoration. So as I mentioned, we had Rutgers University do a carbon baseline. So what we're doing is because we steward 2,700 acres, we're actively investing in natural climate solutions to help us reach that goal. So from reforestation to soil carbon retention. So one of our biggest initiatives right now is we're currently converting 112 acres of what were agricultural lands along the Raritan River to native forests. So we're planting over 55,000 trees and shrubs. And we're not selling carbon credits to it, on it, but we're effectively selling them to ourselves. So we're evaluating the carbon impact of planting that many trees. So again, using our natural lands to figure out how we need to absorb carbon dioxide, because I think that's something that gets lost a little bit in decarbonization because we've emitted so much historically, right? We're already at what, 400, I forget, like 425 parts per million or whatever it is in the atmosphere. We know that that's gonna have huge impact. So the message is that yes, reduction in emissions, yes, natural climate solutions, yes, carbon dioxide removals, yes to it all. Second, electrify everything. So that's our second big strategy. Obviously, something everyone has probably heard of here. And oh, by the way, to the right there's a picture of one of our older wetlands restorations. It's kind of what it looks like that we had done a while ago. It's not the 112 acre restoration, but to the left you can see a picture of our electrify everything strategy and greening our grid. Right. So under the electrify everything strategy, you can see some of our electric vehicles out there parked in front of our farm barn, which is a LEED Platinum building with ground source heat pumps, geothermal heating and cooling. So in the implementation side of things, first, with electrification, we recently integrated, a lot of our electrification into our regular capital replacement planning. So when a vehicle or piece of equipment reaches its end of life, we look for an electric alternative. Sometimes that's challenging. Like I said, the farm equipment, agricultural equipment is not quite ready for prime time, but hand tools are. And hand tools, hand power tools are one of those things that are pretty much equivalent, to what you would find. And they have the other benefit of being, really good for employee health and safety, right? You're not inhaling the 2-cycle fumes with a typical, line trimmer or leaf blower or something. So we've worked on electrification, in our replacement plans. Now we run electric utility carts, trucks, and even we haven't even tracked skid steerer on the farm. So there is one piece of heavy equipment that we do have that's working really well, and our farmers love it. When we're thinking about optimizing, one of the things to think about is this idea of not only what is emitting the most carbon dioxide, but what is most culturally sort of, let's say, less barriers in institution. And we sort of made a mistake. Well, maybe it wasn't a mistake, but it was a point of learning, in that when we looked at our fleet emissions, we saw that there was one particular vehicle that was using the most gasoline, and we're like, oh, we got to replace that first. It's our safety and security vehicle. We have 24-hour safety and security, so this car is running not 24/7, but it's patrolling all over the place. So we're like, all right, we'll get the safety and security folks brand new, Subaru Solterra, beautiful electric vehicle. And we bought it. I think, I don't remember, Joe. Do you remember what month we bought it? We bought it in like August or September. And I kept on asking, why isn't it in service? Why isn't it in service? Well, we need the light bars. We need all this stuff. They were just dragging their feet. They did not want to do it. They were not into it. And it took like literally 3 or 4 months to get this car in service. And I was like super annoyed. I was like, come on, guys. And they just complained, how are we going to charge it? How are we going to... And so, they just were not happy with me and thought we were crazy or whatever. The good thing at Duke Farms is that sustainability crazy people run the place, so we can kind of tell people what to do. So that's a good thing. But you know, on the flip side, one of Joe's guys, the electrician, we decided to replace, or actually get him a Ford Transit van that had been converted to electric, and he kitted it out with all his electric. And this guy is like total cutting edge tech dude, totally into it, totally converted all the staff into like electric. And he's driving around this like beautiful new, you know, Ford Transit van with his electric, you know, shop on wheels. And I guess it's just an example of like, you know, you have to find your advocates, find those people culturally when you're optimizing electrification as well in your organization. And even organizations that are dedicated to environmental sustainability, there are still barriers to some of these things, right? The other thing I want to talk about is the greening the grid, and the system you see here in this is obviously isn't a solar array, but what this is battery energy storage. And so we realized that, you know, in optimizing and figuring out what we needed to do next is we needed to generate green energy. And how, you know, and how to reach our 100% clean electricity goal. So we realized early on that net metering wasn't enough. Even if you generate enough solar to offset your annual use, you're still drawing from the grid, and that electricity often comes from fossil fuels, whether or not using New Jersey or the PJM model. Battery storage just lets us shift and smooth our energy use in real time, not just over the year. So this battery storage went online in March, and we have a new array behind it that now generates 100% of our electricity, still on a net annual basis. We're still not able to get through the winter most of the nights, but we're getting there. And so this graph on the bottom is showing the battery. The yellow on the bottom there, the red line is our load. The yellow is solar, and then that green is it discharging at night underneath the red. So you can see that day, that whole graph is showing one day. During that day, we almost made it all through the night with battery storage. So again, we want to be 100% clean electricity on a daily, net minute by minute basis. The batteries are getting us there. We've learned a lot about that. The final step is, you know, as we're doing this, as we're electrifying our grid, greening our grid, electrifying everything, you know, doing heat pumps in a lot of our buildings, et cetera, we want to track and refine and visualize what we're doing. So we developed a carbon dashboard that logs energy use, emissions, fuel and consumption by building and system. If you're interested, Jim Hansen over there is the guru behind developing this. And we're going to expand it also eventually to show carbon removals. So if you see the Sankey diagram on the bottom there, where it's showing our CO2 emissions in the last 12 months, we want to like have another branch of that showing that for electricity, we're using class 1 RECs, right? For natural gas, we're using our own natural climate solutions. And then maybe for like diesel, gasoline, and other things, we buy carbon dioxide removals. Again, showing that whole picture that we need to do not just decarbonization, but also removals from the atmosphere. So, so what we learned, you know, we're learning that it's possible that you can do this with off-the-shelf technology. You can do it iteratively. It's not as expensive as you think. In fact, you know, Margaret and I had to sell to the board this battery energy storage system that we were going to be paying, you know, quite a bit more in utility costs. But we said, listen, we're reducing our carbon emissions. We're going to be, you know, we're innovating. We're a foundation. We can spend a little bit more on things. It's a public good. But our economic models have turned out to be way too conservative, because what's happened in the meantime, as you all know, is the hyperscalers are, you know, the AI demand and the demand for electric vehicles and heat pumps on the grid is really increasing the costs. And we've seen about a 20% increase in utility costs in New Jersey, which means our economics were like way too conservative. So we're actually going to eventually end up saving more money more quickly with the battery energy storage system. So it's possible. It's less expensive than you think. And it really works. We've reduced our emissions. We're stabilizing our costs. And we're increasing biodiversity with our restorations, all while managing a really complex historic campus. So thank you very much. I look forward to the questions and answers. And any questions about this, myself and my Duke Farms colleagues are here. If you saw something interesting you want to dig a little bit more in, happy to answer questions after this as well. Thank you.
Awesome job. Thanks so much, John. Alrighty. And next up, we will be hearing from Rachel Novick, from the Director of Sustainability at the Morton Arboretum. Let's give her an applaud as she comes forward.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. So, the Morton Arboretum is on 1,700 acres in the outskirts of Chicago. We are an outdoor tree museum. We're also a regional and global leader in tree conservation. And we recently entered our second century. And one of our big goals for our second century is to be a leader in how we operate sustainably, in addition to continuing to expand the work we do in tree conservation. So our first big step in this journey was to create a greenhouse gas inventory and to really understand where are our emissions. And so we started in 2021 with this process and looked backwards to 2019 to develop a baseline. And not surprisingly, we found that electricity was our biggest source of emissions, followed by natural gas, and then followed by commuting. And so this started to help us start thinking strategically about how we were going to approach reducing our emissions. So that was in 2021. And in 2023, we developed a sustainability strategy for the Arboretum. And this is our roadmap to 2040. We've also been in parallel engaged in a comprehensive master site planning process, also thinking about where we are now and where we hope to be in 2040, and then really trying to intertwine sustainability with all the different ways that we want to grow as an institution. So the different aspects of our sustainability strategy. First, the built environment. Even though most of our 1,700 acres is forest and prairie and wetlands, most of our carbon emissions are, of course, our buildings. So thinking about our built environment, we have a lot of historic buildings. So thinking about both the ways that we can retrofit those, and then as we build new buildings or need to replace some of our failing buildings, our goal is to build net zero going forward. And in terms of vehicles and mobile equipment, we do have a really substantial fleet, as you heard from others also, who have a lot of property, a lot of vehicles, a lot of landscape equipment. And so how do we move to electrify that entire fleet? And then at the same time, streamline it and use it more efficiently. Business travel and commuting is also a big chunk of our carbon emissions. We're in a place in the suburbs where it's not easy to get to via public transportation. And so we've been exploring different ways that we can support people to either carpool. We have a van pool from the train if people can take the train to the nearest train station, and then also offering free EV charging for those who are able to get an EV and take that to work. In terms of food and dining, we have a really large restaurant and catering operation. We've transitioned over the last couple of years to be majority vegetarian in our menu, and we also compost all of our food waste back of house, and then we are looking at a variety of different ways to reduce the carbon footprint of the food that we serve, partnering with Aramark, which is our catering provider, and their Cool Foods campaign. Waste reduction is an area in which we have a long history. We have been composting all our landscape waste on site for decades, but we still have a long way to go in terms of really reducing the amount of waste that we send to landfill from visitors, and so that's been a focus that we've been working on the last couple of years. And then in terms of water, we already do use a lot of surface and well water for irrigation, but certainly not all. And so That's a big goal for us as we're looking toward our site planning and how we want to develop our property. How can we add more wells and surface water irrigation, and eventually, hopefully, not be using potable water for irrigating at all. And then our final two areas, procurement, IT, chemicals, integrated pest management, all of these kind of relate to, what we buy, what kind of materials we're using in order to further our operations, and how we can really think strategically about how we're using our dollars to support sustainability. So I wanted to highlight just a couple of projects that we've been working on recently, or sort of looking toward the future that we're in process of. So first, I just wanted to share a little bit about our first electric building, which we're really excited about. This is an open-air wedding venue that we opened in 2023. This is our first net zero building, so it's all electric. It works on heat pumps, and we procured renewable energy for this building. So this is a great first start for our institution to sort of get our feet wet and get the experience for our staff in maintaining and operating a heat pump, and recognizing that this is something that they actually really like as a technology. So we're really looking forward to this as a first step toward further electrification of our buildings. Similarly, in terms of fleet electrification, what we've been doing the first few years is really testing out. We have now a pretty wide variety of different electrical types of equipment, whether that's street vehicles, whether that's utility vehicles for on-site snow throwers, lawnmowers, chainsaws. And what we're getting to the point is, I think we're really just at that kind of critical moment where people go from well, I can use it on some occasions if it's not too intense a project and I don't have so many hours that I need to be out there, to actually this meets my needs. And I feel like we've really just very recently got to that point where the cultural shift has happened, or people feel really comfortable relying on this equipment in virtually all situations. And so what we're doing right now is transitioning to a policy-based approach. Instead of having folks, instead of encouraging people to buy this stuff and try it out, we're now going to an approach where we're saying that there has to be a really, really compelling case made that either an electrical option is not available, or it is not safe, or will not do the job. Basically, that you have to prove to us that you need something that's fossil fuel powered. And so I'm really excited about that. So I feel like that's a really big turning point. And then finally, last project I wanted to share with you is a project that we've been working on since 2022, which is to build a solar array, a 2-megawatt array that's going to actually power our entire operation. So we're very excited about that. You can see most of it in this rendering. It's not there yet, because one thing that I learned is that solar arrays take a really long time to build. But we are really far along in this process. We've already constructed underground cables and some of the electrical equipment to support the array, and then we're about to break ground on the actual array. And one thing that you might notice about this array that's pretty unique is that there are no spaces in between the rows of solar panels. And that's because it's on a south-facing hillside, and so it doesn't shade itself. So this is actually a really unique design that uses land really efficiently. So whereas for a 2-megawatt array, it might take something like 8 to 10 acres typically, these panels are going to be on 3.5 acres. So we are really excited about this as a model. You also see in this rendering that it's facing an interstate highway. And so that was also part of our goal, is we want to set a role model for others. So I'm really excited to hopefully have news at the next symposium about having a live array. So where are we with all this? We're very much still on our journey. As we look at our latest greenhouse gas inventory, we've achieved a 13% reduction from 2019. We've successfully reduced our emissions from electricity and from natural gas through energy conservation projects with our buildings. In a lot of areas, we still have a long way to go. So I think one thing we're all familiar with is that this is an ongoing journey that needs to just happen every year, and we need to just kind of keep chipping away. So while our solar array is going to take a really big chunk out of our carbon emissions, we're still going to be continuing to really pound on all the different other aspects of our greenhouse gas inventory. So some of the things that I wanted to highlight that I feel like are areas of growth for us and topics that I'm really interested in talking about with others during coffee breaks. Our greenhouse gas inventory doesn't include everything that it could, and one of my goals is to expand our understanding of how fertilizer use impacts greenhouse gas emissions, and also purchase goods, which are that scope 3 piece that's kind of really hard to wrap our brains around, but I think is really, really important. And so those are some areas where I'm hoping that we can get a better understanding of our emissions so that we can manage them. And then in terms of electrification, I'm really excited about what's happening in the industry in terms of the development of more powerful and capable robotic mowers. And so if anybody wants to talk robotic mowers at coffee break, please come find me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Rachel's already set up her discussion questions. I love that you're ready for it. So we already know what your interests are. And last but not least, we are going to hear from Rafael de Carvalho. de Carvalho. I'm really interested in making sure I say his name right. Associate Vice President for Capital Projects at New York Botanical Gardens. Let's give him a round of applause.
Hi, everyone. So I work at the New York Botanical Garden for the Capital Projects Department. We are a civic institution at New York City at the heart of the Bronx. We were established in 1891. So over 130 years, we've invited millions of visitors to make the garden part of their lives, exploring joy and beauty and respite of nature. We are about 250 acres of land used for renowned exhibitions, immersive botanical experiences, art and music, and events with influential figures in the plant and fungi, science, horticulture, and humanities. We're also stewards of significant research collections from the Lester T. Mertz Library Collection, which was one of the first botanical public libraries in the U.S., as well as the William and Linda Steer Herbarium, which is the largest herbarium in the Western Hemisphere. Here's a map of the garden of our 250 acres, which includes a 50-acre old-growth forest, one of the 2 remaining native forests in the 5 boroughs of New York. We are lucky enough to have the Bronx River flow through our grounds, as well as other lakes, streams, and wetlands that assist in the biodiversity of our horticultural specimens. Buildings. We have over 25 buildings and structures built from 1891, with the latest built in 2018. It is a portfolio of conservatories and glasshouses, a botanical museum with climatized exhibition galleries, a botanical public library, the herbarium, visitor centers, restaurants, catering venues, education centers, laboratories, and all the back-of-house facilities that keep us operational, which there are plenty of. And of course, we have our gardens to upkeep with the same operational facilities. So in 2022, we embarked on a comprehensive master plan for 2050. This master plan was founded on 5 goals that were developed through NYBG leadership. One of those goals was to strengthen climate resilience and sustainability, strengthen the resiliency of the garden while minimizing environmental impact of building systems, infrastructure, equipment, and vehicles, and strengthen our sustainability by reducing resource use across all the operational areas. Our operational carbon is contributed by our HVAC systems, lighting, lawn mowing, and internal transportation of people and goods. Those are the largest contributors. NYC, the city of New York, has committed to reducing its greenhouse gas emissions through Local Law 97 2019 by 40% in 2030 and 80% 2050. The garden has committed to these garden-wide. This goal and these local laws apply to large buildings, but we have decided to implement it to the entire garden, including all of our smaller facilities. So we've been prioritizing these efforts to minimize operational energy demands since 2005. What we see here are a list of measures that have been implemented before the comprehensive master plan that have shown a reduction of about 24% of energy use through the installation of building management systems, conversion of building equipment to replace the heavy fossil fuel dependent systems, replacement of light fixtures with more efficient LED systems, installation of VFDs and smart valves, building level motors and pumps tied back into our BMS systems, and a commitment that all new structures are going to be entirely electrified, and explore the use of renewable energy systems such as geothermal and solar PV. Since 2019, we've made efforts to offset some of the energy through purchase of RECs. More notably, we've been working with the New York City Department of Administrative Services, DCAS, on energy feasibility studies for the implementation of solar across our grounds. 6 locations, 6 sites have been studied and can yield up to an 11% reduction based on our 2021 electricity demand. There are challenges associated with these. Funding, of course, is one of the largest challenges. Fortunately, New York City, wants to support us financially, and all these solar PV arrays, they're happy to fund. However, we are responsible for making sure that the buildings and the roofing is ready to receive these PVs. So structural limitations in some of these properties that we're studying to see whether or not they can receive the solar PVs, and then of course the funding associated with replacing roofing so that it's back at 0 years old and has 30 years of useful life before we have to take off the PV systems and replace the roofing again. So what you see here is our proposed decarbonization roadmap. So again, local law 97 set a set of laws designed to enable NYC to achieve its goal of carbon neutrality by 2050. The shaded blue represents that threshold, the thresholds that we need to meet between 2024, 2030, and 2050. The red line represents what we were tracking pre-comprehensive master plan based on the measures that we showed earlier. We were going to meet our 2030 threshold goal by just doing that. However, we would not have met the 2050 goals. And so based on the new comprehensive master plan, we are tracking pretty well up until 2049. We do have a few more upgrades that we need to make in order to meet those 2050 goals. But we are confident that with energy systems development over the next 25 years, solar PV systems are going to generate more efficient systems for us, and we can get to the goals that we need to. Recommendations for new buildings. We want to make sure that all new buildings operate in all electric mechanical systems with the goal of net zero or better, net positive operations by using energy efficient envelopes, energy efficient systems that also tap into renewable energy systems. We'd like to achieve below EUI targets per building typology, or 30 to 40% reduction over the LEED baselines. Of course, install roof photovoltaic systems for all roofs where they are feasible. Where they are not, we'll go with green roofing systems. And provide building level energy metering. That is something that we do lack across the garden. Not all of our buildings are metered, so that makes it difficult for us to understand who the worst culprits are in terms of our energy demand. And integrate BMS with all the sub-metering and with upgrades to the systems. And on top of that, of course, complete fundamental enhanced HVAC and envelope commissioning so that we ensure that we are getting the most out of the systems that we are investing in. Gonna skirt through these slides, but we have a plan. It's important that we've set our goals, and then we create a framework to get there. And so we have a framework for the next 5 years, for the next 5 to 10, and then beyond those 10 years to 2050. And this will help us keep on track to meeting those goals. In terms of embodied carbon and sequestration, just looking at our existing site paving materials, it's a substantial expenditure of embodied carbon. Fortunately, we have an existing extensive planting inventory, including our old growth forest, that helps with biological sequestration. Right now, we are tracking net positive, which is wonderful, but we can always be more net positive. So recommendations for advancing with all of our initiatives are to analyze wood structures for new buildings as opposed to steel and concrete, reduce the project embodied carbon by a minimum of 10 to 20% in the structure and the enclosure through the change of these materials and systems. Ensure that 50 to 60% of new wood by cost is to be FSC certified, divert 80 to 95% of construction demolition waste, and compost 100% of our organic waste and provide sufficient space to do so. How we do all of that, we're still working on it. But those are the recommendations that'll get us to where we want to be. So I'm going to get into two projects. One is a new build, and one is a project on an existing building. Apologize about the font. We have a new funky font that we've recently developed, but it didn't come on here. So our site operations center is a new building that is set to be a net positive energy building. We started the design in 2021. It is being funded by a plethora of sources, private, city, state, and federal. Lots of pots for us to navigate, the funding processes. And we're very excited about it. The design was completed in 2023. We submitted a funding request to the city in 2024, and that typically sits for about 2 years, usually 3, until we can break ground. So some of the sustainable design features for this building, it is a back-of-house facility. Embodied carbon reduction through the use of a mass timber structure as opposed to steel and concrete, utilization of ultra-high performance concrete cladding, energy efficient systems such as geothermal heat pumps, ERVs, and high-performance LED lighting, a robust exterior envelope that is highly insulated with optimized performance glazing and thermal break assemblies, on-site renewable energy. So the larger masses of the buildings have roofs that are sloped to the southwest, and they are maximized with solar PV systems. The lower roof is a green roof system. In addition to the solar PVs, this building will be supplemented by 10 geothermal wells, about 500 feet deep, and other, it's not energy, but water. We care about our water in New York, low flow fixtures, and we already have an on-site stormwater detention system. We are now building a stormwater infiltration system so that we infiltrate as much as we can before it's detained, contributing to New York's already over-exhausted stormwater system. An existing site plan, again, it's back of house. So we have 3 back of house buildings that make up our operations department. The existing lower garage building will be, has outlived its useful life. There are some structural issues with it. It will be demolished for the construction of this new net zero energy building. That new building will occupy all of the program that's currently occupied across the 3 buildings, and the other 2 buildings we hope to one day return back to the public realm of the garden. Really quickly, it's administrative spaces. The lower level includes shops, a vehicle repair, vehicle storage area, locker rooms, and multi-purpose room for our operations departments. In terms of energy efficiency, the building will be supported by 7 water-to-air heat pumps that'll provide heating and cooling to the conditioned spaces. Some of the spaces require heating only, such as our vehicle repair area and the shops, and so there will be water-to-water heat pumps to provide that heating. There will be 3 ERVs for 100% outdoor air handling units with energy recovery ventilators to provide sort of office spaces, locker room, and shop areas. As you can see here, our baseline, so we were looking at a local law 31 and 32 baseline, which sets standards for our energy use against also the LEED baseline. We worked with the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. We're very fortunate that New York City does support these efforts. We've covered the entire design for this building to meet the local law requirements. Anything in addition to those local law requirements to make the building more energy efficient, DCAS has funded us for feasibility studies and is considering funding us for those actual build systems. So we're very grateful for that support. It's allowed us to understand what we can do to really push the envelope of these buildings. So just looking at this here, there's a 65% energy reduction from the local law baseline, and what we're able to push through this funding fast for the building more efficient. The exterior envelope, again, the ultra high performance, it's a fun name. Concrete cladding, optimized daylighting strategies, making sure that all the spaces that need daylight are put up against the edges of the building. High insulated roof and walls that are prefabricated wood frames. We've done solar studies to ensure that we are setting up the array in the best way possible. This building is expected to require about 130,000 kilowatts of energy per year. The array should generate approximately 150 kilowatts per year, making this building net energy positive, about 18,000 kilowatts a year. We have our own internal grid. There are 2 points of connection with the city electrical system. Beyond those 2 points, we have a medium voltage line that feeds all of our buildings. So this building, any of the excess energy that it creates annually will be returned to the other buildings within our grid, resulting in a reduction of the energy that we're pulling from the city itself. And then we have 10 geothermal wells on site that will supplement those heat pump systems. All right. In terms of embodied carbon, we worked with Atelier 10 to perform an analysis on how much embodied carbon we're optimizing by shifting from a steel frame building to a mass timber building. That alone reduced a 19% reduction of embodied carbon. The proposed design utilized ultra high performance concrete, higher insulation systems, Hydrotech liquid roofing membrane, and all that resulted in an additional 6% embodied carbon reduction, followed by the optimization of our concrete mixes, which got us to a 29% reduction from the baseline. And then when we consider the carbon sequestration by using the wood products, we're looking at about 92% reduction in that embodied carbon. So it's easier to get a new building to be net zero. It is much more challenging, I believe, to get existing buildings to get there. And we have a lot of existing buildings, again, that date back to 1891. One of the oldest being our museum complex. So we've set a roadmap to get to net zero. The museum complex is made up of the original museum building, which is a landmark structure built in 1889, and with a wing, the Pratt Library wing, built in the 60s, our Watson Education Center in the 70s, and the International Plant Science Center, which is our herbarium, in the 90s. Currently, in terms of existing conditions, the landmark original building has a set of 3 boilers in its boiler room. 2 of them are 300 horsepower dual fuel systems, which have outlived their useful lives. One 100 horsepower gas-fueled steam boiler that has also outlived its useful life, and 37 air handler units that are used for heating only. They are able to do both heating and cooling. At the time they were installed, we only had enough funding to install the systems that would pump hot water to these air handler units. In addition, we've got about 50 plus window-mounted air conditioning units on our beautiful landmark facade. And that provides about 80% of the cooling in the building, with 20% of the cooling coming from the chillers in our IPSC building. The IPSC, International Plant Science Center, has 2 300-ton chillers, which have also outlived their useful lives, and 2 300 PAC cooling towers. Heating for this building is supplied by those steam boilers in its building. It's a web of HVAC systems in this complex. The Pratt wing has an air-cooled chiller located on its roof, outlived its useful life. 2 air handling units located in the penthouse, outlived its useful life. And the heating is provided through air handling units, which are supplied by the steam boilers in the Mertz building. And then our Watson building, much of the same. systems that have outlived their useful lives and are in need of replacement, and again, heating supplied by those steam boilers. So how do we get to net zero? We've got 4 phases that we have planned, and other initiatives that we're taking across the garden. So phase 1 is a replacement of these chillers that is currently in construction. This past weekend we have shut down our existing chillers for the very last time, and they're starting to get removed and replaced. They need to be substantially completed by April 15th, when we need to be cooling again. This project is fully funded by the New York City Department of Administrative Services, which, again, we're very grateful for their support. Phase 2. So phase 2 will require the removal of 2 of those steam-powered, 2 of the dual-fuel steam boilers from the Mertz building, and they will be replaced by 9 electrified heat pumps, supplemented by 90 geothermal wells across our parking lot. It's hard to see here. There are a lot of trees along the site, and a lot of utilities that we will be weaving around to make sure that we can install these 90 geothermal wells with these drill rigs that don't interrupt any of the drip lines. And we'll also be installing a dual temp pump system. The goal of that is to allow for those 37 air handling units to not only be providing heating, but also providing cooling. Make the most of what we already have, and then remove those 50 plus window air cooling units throughout our landmark facade. So funding for this will be supported by the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs and private funding as well. Phase 3 is the elimination of that final boiler for what we expect to be additional heat pumps and geothermal wells. We've just initiated a feasibility study with PCAS to understand what that would mean, and then we'd be kickstarting the design for that system. And then phase 4 is solar photovoltaics. Phase 3 or 4 might be swapped depending on when our roofing can get replaced, but we'd be trying to install solar PVs across all of the roofs where we get a good yield in solar energy, and we'll make a good case with the city for putting it on our landmark roof and make sure that it's not visible from the from grade. Other initiatives include enhancements to our lighting and controls, upgrades to the BMS system across the garden, and sub-metering. So what you see here in this graphic is a site plan of the garden's electric infrastructure, and our attempt at creating a line riser diagram for all of the electric building services and building. All of the systems in red here are proposed new sub-meters so that we can understand, again, what buildings are our largest culprits. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Rafael, and thank all of the panelists for their presentations today. We do have some time for some questions and answers, and I will definitely hear from you all as well. But we want to begin with the initial question for the group, and you all just pass it along as we ask questions. We heard a lot today about, how you all have began your various plans. So we wanted to know, ultimately, what moved your organization to prioritize decarbonization?
Well, for us, I think was the becoming more and more aware of climate change and the dangers of climate change, and thinking about that this is something we need to really take responsibility ourselves to see what we can do to address it instead of just relying or waiting on government to solve the problem. We felt that it's really important for us to do, and also recognize that we have a unique opportunity based on the respect and the standing that we have in our community to actually lead by example and show people that it is possible to address climate change and still do a lot of the things that we'd like to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think with us, we had to more deliberately plan what we were doing starting in 2015, and sort of be ready with plans on the shelf for sort of a little bit of a change in strategic direction, a change in the way we looked at climate change. I remember in 2014, 2015, we were really focused more on wildlife habitat, ecological conservation, less on our built environment. So in having these plans and climate change just becoming more and more of an issue over the past 10 years or so, and a large leadership change, we were able to really accelerate a lot of what we do. And again, that like Richard said, that leading by example is something we really take seriously and want to do. Where it was mostly related to land stewardship and environmental conservation, as we started to look at like climate change and what we could do to decarbonize, we felt we really had a responsibility as a public-facing institution supported by a foundation to do everything we could to decarbonize.
So I'd say this answer for the garden has been twofold. One, New York City's local laws have been a big driver, and making sure that we commit to decarbonization and reducing our energy use. And the second part is over the past 12 years, I think there was a pivot where energy reduction went from or investment in these systems went from a nice to have to a need to do. And with leadership within the garden and small initiatives, we started implementing some of these systems, and over the years noticed the payback. And so between 2005 to 2018, when we constructed our Edible Academy, we had an increase in about 6,000 square feet of of building gross square footage, but a reduction overall in our energy use through a lot of these initiatives. And so in seeing a positive result and then understanding the city's drive for some of these new standards and a formal plan, we embarked on our own.
Well, we've been deeply engaged in research on the impacts of climate change on trees and forests around the world for many years. And so we've been grappling with these issues of how climate change is and will impact our forests, and helping other arboreta around the world through our ArbNet network, and helping urban forests in the Chicago region through our Chicago Region Trees Initiative, and now with that program being statewide, helping communities throughout the state to think about how they're going to support forests into the future. And so as we think about climate change really deeply, and it just be part of everything that we're working on as an institution, we need to set that example, be a role model for everyone that we're collaborating with, as well as our 1 million+ visitors.
Awesome. So I have one other question that we wanted to ask, and that would be about achieving that buy-in. I heard a lot of conversation around cultural shift, and so for many of you, that cultural shift helped to drive much of your way in which to get buy-in. But was there any others that any of you can speak on in regards to getting the institution or the board or the leadership to get on board with what you were looking to do in decarbonization? Any of you, a few of you can answer that. Just a few. Richard,
I think for us it was showing people that it can be done, and starting small, starting with our Welcome Center back in 2005, showing that we could achieve LEED certification, which, back in 2005, LEED was still relatively unknown, getting people excited about that. Then every other building since that time, we've been raising the bar, getting people excited and showing that it is possible and getting people on board. It wasn't always easy. I mean, we heard before one of the speakers talked about, some pushback from staff. I think it was you, John. But, we've had some of that as well. But I think little by little, people see that it is something we could aspire to, and that it's something we could achieve. And they got very excited about it.
Yeah, for us, yeah, I mean, there's buy-in kind of throughout the organization. And by the way, the security folks love their EV now, so they tried it. They really do like it, and I don't think they're just saying that to me now. But yeah, I mean, for us, it was that plan, like starting with the carbon footprint and starting with like kind of a general plan, and just sort of slowly, integrating it into the institution. And then as leadership changed, we were ready to kind of present this plan in a really pretty rigorous way, and we were challenged to do it in a rigorous way, especially with our battery energy storage system attached to our new solar. We were able to make the argument that, hey, like I said, we're going to spend more per kilowatt hour, but we're going to get this innovation. We're going to reduce our carbon emissions, and again, a lot of it just had to do with kind of that rigorous planning that we did and showing how it can be done, and then implementing what we could when we could, right? Like Richard was saying, like, you could kind of do some little things along the way. You can upgrade your hand power tools to electric. So any way we could just sort of do things and show not only senior leadership and the trustees that it worked, but also the staff.
I think these systems are all maybe a little too complex sometimes to kind of pick up for a normal visitor or a member of the board. And I think it's important for that buy-in to have interpretive signage, have text on our website, at our visitor center that describe these systems to people so that they understand what they're looking at, such as putting a PV system next to a highway, right? I think when you're doing something green, you want to make sure that you are teaching the people who are experiencing or interacting with it what exactly they're looking at. And I think that the buy-in has come in from mostly our visitors and our staff, where they've been very excited to be within some of these greener buildings, just better daylighting, better air quality, and through word of mouth, that's just kind of become well known by our board and our staff leadership, and I think that that's just built excitement across the board.
One thing that I think has given a lot of energy to our sustainability initiative is that it really was a grassroots push from our staff during the 2019 strategic planning process. There was just really a lot of agreement across all different areas of our Arboretum staff that we needed to have this be a focus for the Arboretum, and that they wanted to see us have a director of sustainability, which we hadn't had before, and see sustainability woven into all aspects of our planning going forward. So I think from a grassroots bottom-up approach, that's really where our buy-in got started, and it's built from there. And then from our leadership approach, I think it's been really critical to quantify and communicate the multiple benefits of the sustainability work that we're doing. That yes, this is reducing our emissions, but it's also improving our guest experience by reducing noise on our property, and it's also protecting the health of our staff and reducing their exposure to fumes and vibration, and so helping them understand that we're all the different multiple benefits that we're getting out of these efforts.
All right, are there any questions in the audience today?
Hello, thank you for your presentations. Beyond cultural barriers, could you talk about any labor gaps that you were addressing either through certification or upskilling or training that you needed staff to be ready for new systems before bringing it in? And if so, were there any citywide programs that you participated in, or any sort of, if they were represented by labor unions, any sort of expectation that this be provided to them? Thank you.
So we have not received support from the city for training per se, but whenever we do construct our new buildings or install new systems, we make it a part of the specifications that the contractors are required to train our staff on how to use these systems. And so that, alongside with the HVAC commissioning, we make sure that our engineering department is well equipped to maintain any of these new systems, understand how they work, have all the documentation in hand to, if they ever need to ask a question, the information's there. And yeah.
I first arrived at Duke Farms, I was, they were just finishing commissioning 2 LEED Platinum buildings. And unfortunately, they didn't do what you did at New York Botanical Garden, and they didn't train and involve the facilities and maintenance staff and a lot of the high-tech things, from the rainwater collection systems to the ground source heat pumps to constructed wetlands wastewater treatment system. So it's a great question, and something I think you have to think a lot about, especially if you're pushing the cutting edge on some of this technology, and your staff may not be 100% trained. So I think it literally took 5 or 6 years for us to get our head around a lot of these systems, from the BMS not working completely well to compliance issues with our constructed wetland system. And a lot of it could have been avoided if we had taken an approach that it sounds like you guys are.
I'd like to add, you have to be pretty aggressive in making sure that during the closeout of these projects that you're getting everything that you need. I think usually at 90 to 100% completion, the contractors are ready to get out of there. And it is in your best interest to look after yourselves and making sure that you're asking all the right questions. In terms of BMS upgrades and whatnot, you can't just receive the system, even after it's been commissioned. As is, you do need to ask pretty thorough questions to make sure that they have designed and set up the framework in the ways that you need, in the ways that your staff uses it, not just the way that they're used to handing it off to any client.
Sure. Rafael, it was music to my ears every time you said local law 97 because I worked on that when I was with the city of New York. But I'm curious to hear from the other panelists, or maybe more reflection from you, Rafael, about how your institutions work on the development and implementation of local legislation that impacts your operations, if at all.
So prior to the comprehensive master plan that was completed in 2022, I think it was a very grassroots approach where each department kind of took it upon themselves. Each department that is impacted by that local law took it upon themselves to try and understand how to change their systems and plan for the future. I think with having a formal master plan that really dives deep into these local laws and how it impacts your entire garden, making it a formalized project, gives you the framework, or at least a roadmap to understand what you need to be doing in the next 10 years to meet that 2030 goal, and then the next 25 to meet the 2050 goal. I think it's really investing in the work to plan instead of just kind of doing it haphazardly. I mean, I think both are important, but yeah.
We're on unincorporated land, so we don't have a lot of local regulations that are impacting the way we're developing on our property, but we do think a lot about the way that local regulations can benefit green infrastructure and urban forestry. And so we administer a $15 million IRA grant throughout the state of Illinois, in which we're able to support urban forestry and local communities. And the way we do that is by requiring local regulations to be developed so that they support healthy trees and urban forests. So, that could be laws governing green infrastructure. It could be laws about when construction happens, making sure that trees are protected. In order for communities to get those funds, they have to have that local regulation in place. So what we're trying to do is then create lots of robust communities that have the regulations in place to have healthy urban forests.
I could think of one example when we were building the Center for Sustainable Landscapes. One of the requirements of the Living Building Challenge is you have to treat all your sanitary water on site. So when we went to the state and the local and the officials and the health department, and we told them that we wanted to create this constructed wetland to treat our own sanitary water on site, they said, "You want to do what?" We're like, wait a minute. And so we had to jump through a lot of hoops to prove to them that this was something that was possible, that it could be done safely. and actually made it possible for, other institutions now been able to do that as well. So it did help change the regulations regarding that one particular thing in particular.
Yeah, and with us, it's really similar. We're not allowed to lobby because we're a foundation, but we do, when we installed our battery energy storage system, it was the first time any fire marshals saw such a system in New Jersey. So it was a little bit of a pain. We all had to educate ourselves, but now, the town and the fire subcode officials and the fire marshals all know about batteries, and now they're sort of leaders in the state on that. So there have been things like that. Also, the utility and the Board of Public Utilities in New Jersey is very interested in our battery storage systems as they're coming and learning. So it's not necessarily lobbying, but it's showing that this stuff works. It's showing how it can be done, and that it's possible.
Hi, Jessica Turner-Scuff from Longwood Gardens. First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone and your expertise. It's been fascinating. My question for you all is, I noticed we're considering employee commuting and everything like that. And do you all have AI policies in place, and how are you balancing the use of this tool with the sustainability implications? Because it's here. So I'm just curious to hear more information from you all.
That is a really important question, and it's something that we're just beginning to start to look into right now, because AI is just enormously bad for the environment, and we really need to make sure that we're doing things that are not contributing to that. But we're just getting started in that.
Same. We're actually required to use it too. Our tech team and CEO was all in on it. So it's been a conversation at the foundation, especially. Along with all other Scope 3 emissions. So for example, the Doris Duke Foundation, the foundation program officers tend to do a lot of flying, and so that's also, so we're trying to look at Scope 3 comprehensively, and figuring out which ones are more easily accounted for, and have better ways to really figure out what those emissions associated with them are.
Not, I mean, to echo what they're saying, but we're a little behind with our implementation of AI in looking at energy and decarbonization. I think just about a month ago we developed our first AI HR policies for how we can use it within the organization. So I don't quite have an answer for you on that one.
We also just rolled out our first AI policy for staff, but recognizing that this whole technology is changing so quickly that any policy that we roll out is going to have to be a living document and a work in progress at all times. So we're having a series of lunch and learn discussions with staff about ethics and about sustainability, and to really try to answer their questions to the best of our ability about what the implications are of their use, and how they can really think critically about whether there's a serious value add to them utilizing it for a certain goal versus whether it's a shiny new way to do something that maybe they could have done otherwise just as well.
Well, this is unrelated to the last question, but it's a question I was expecting to hear from the audience, and maybe just because we don't have time, I didn't hear it. But usually somebody will ask the question of well, how do you afford all that? Okay.
That was on my list.
That was on your list?
Yes,
Okay.
it's on my
All right,
list.
good. And I would like to say, there's 4 large institutions up here, obviously have probably a lot more resources than some of the other institutions that are being represented here. And I think that really points out to what the beauty of the Climate Toolkit is that it allows everybody to put all of these ideas on there, some large, some very expensive solutions, some that are very inexpensive to initiate. But the point is, if all these things are out there for people to be able to see and to browse around, eventually, no matter what size organization you are, in whatever kind of resources you have, eventually you can find something that actually might align to what you could afford to do, or that makes sense for you to do. So I would encourage everyone to put whatever you're doing to address climate change on the toolkit, so that other people can see and learn from it, and eventually all of us can find something that we could do. And that's the important thing, is to start. If you start with something small, get your staff excited, get your board excited, show people that it's positive, get your community excited. Tomorrow, Sonia and I will be doing a session on essence, about aligning institutional essence with community essence, about how do you get your community involved in this as well. Eventually, if you start doing these things, you're going to attract some donors that are really excited about what you're doing, and so the money will come for you. So again, I just want to really encourage you to get involved, show things that that you're doing, because eventually all of us can do something. So thanks.
All right, let's give our panelists a hand.